Welcome back, everyone. I'm here today with my friend and co-conspirator at times, Tirza Hollenhorst, who is the CEO of Luman. And she uses her experience in business and neuroscience as well as innovation to transform organizations and helping them to prepare for the future of work. So welcome, Tirza. I'm so happy to have you here on the podcast, and I'm even more excited that you're going to share some of your wisdom with us.
I'm so delighted to be here with you. This is really exciting.
So we met a while ago, and we had an instant connection over the art of doing business and the transformation most companies are experiencing when it comes to business development and sales. So this has been a big focus for you over the last several months. And I wanted to know if you would share with us a little bit of your insights that you have gathered that you think would be interesting.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, we've seen over just our recent experience that sales are really changing, and as businesses need to more rapidly evolve and meet their customers' really rapidly changing needs, salespeople are the front lines of innovation. They're the front lines of collecting what clients are really needing and how they're relating to the different products, how the different ways they're needing to be educated about the product. And what we're seeing is that companies have just an incredible opportunity to be integrating their salespeople into the innovation process rather than just seeing them as these kind of robots at the tail end whose job it is to deliver a script about the innovation, about a new product, but that they're at the front lines of taking in this new customer need. And that requires different skills, and that requires a real different approach to the salesperson, and the salesperson needs a different approach to the customer.
Yeah, so you and I talk about this quite a bit, and it's creating high value exchanges over hounding somebody with a scripted model to convince them to get a sale or closing a piece of business that could potentially result even in buyer's remorse or resentment, definitely increases complaints, versus focusing on a high value exchange where you're training the sales teams and the sales enablement people around them into really listening into what the customer needs, how you can position the value of the product or the service or the organization towards the customer to create a high value exchange where people walk away feeling enriched and enabled by purchasing the product or service, whatever it is. And I'm wondering, I know that that's an approach I take a lot because I find that we're in negotiation with everything and everyone around us in this world, and teaching sales teams in particular these skill sets to hone in on a new level of listening rather than scripted selling can yield higher returns. What is your biggest observation that you've made recently where there's a shift in the organization when you focus on high value exchanges over scripted sales?
Well, I think that the biggest shift is that real opportunity to learn, especially in technology where our technology products are kind of in perpetual beta, right? They're always evolving. They're always changing their feature set. They're changing how things are placed even on the screen. And if the salesperson is approaching a sales from this value exchange, from the idea is not only am I going to serve you, the customer, but I'm also here to learn from you. I'm here to learn about your needs and how this product could be meeting your needs better. And to help you solve the challenges you're going to have as you adopt a new system and change your business processes around that, and help you solve the challenge of selling up your value chain. That if I'm really approaching that as a salesperson from that, I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn from this person. Then there's a wealth of information that the salesperson can gain from the customer and bring into the organization. And so that if we begin to set up that pipeline of information from sales into the development or R&D or wherever people are creating those new innovations and that change of the system, that pipeline of information coming from sales to R&D is really fresh and new. A lot of companies in the old way of selling, the salesperson, they just hounded people with the product. Push.
Yeah.
As we begin to pull information in through the sales channel, now we're just like, it's an entirely new wealth of information and customer feedback. And that is the biggest change that I'm seeing, is that we begin to really put the customer at the center of the whole organization. And all of us are coming around the customer, whether you're in sales or marketing or development, that customer stays at the center.
Mm-hmm. I liked what you said about tying the customer experience into research and development, right? And what makes the biggest difference in that is you are always staying fresh on what the customer actually needs versus trying to push a product into the world that isn't really meeting the product market fit. So changing the format of the organization and using sales as a research tool as much as a sales tool can really transform an organization, a product, and with that speed up the business development of the business itself, the sales of the business. You know, I see that myself too when I work with organizations and teams, that when the voices of the actual client interaction point I tied into those who are improving or delivering the product, you're closing the gap on the product market fit much faster, and then takes away the guessing game of how can you position the sales pitch and the value proposition better based on the actual feedback you're getting. Because at the end of the day, when you have a product, when you have a service, no matter what it is, whether you're an entrepreneur or an organization, without a sale, you don't have a business. Without a customer, you know, it's you're creating a pipe dream at best. So thinking through the different channels of communication and essentially research that allows you to perfect your product and the market fit based on really listening to what do people actually want, and then developing and improving into that, will shorten that gap in the sales cycle, and it will greatly improve, in my experience, people's ability to sell, create high value exchanges, and also the holistic approach of how to run an organization, right? Because I think in this day and age with customer service and social media, if there's a disconnect between the product you're purchasing and the customer service that you're receiving after you were sold a product isn't aligned, that becomes transparent very quickly. Because people talk, and they talk publicly on social media, right?
Yeah, and they talk most about customer service experience. That's where, you know, if you really look at reviews on anything, what you find is the greatest number of negative reviews are going to be people's experience with the customer service. And that's true whether we're talking about a CRM or a refrigerator, you know, or, you know, shoes or, you know, hair products. It doesn't really matter. It's all about what happens when things aren't perfect. How is that handled? That's where companies like Zappos gain such a reputation, is because they really, really focused on that customer service side of things. And people continuously had amazing experiences on the customer service side. And bringing this back to that kind of holistic picture, when we've worked with companies building entrepreneurship programs, sometimes the entrepreneurship program is the first time engineers, people who are actually building products, have a conversation with the customer. it's this like revolutionary experience for them. They're like, wait, we can just talk to customers? We're like, you can just talk to customers. Don't we have to fill out a form? No, we could just go talk to customers.
Yeah.
And that experience of sitting in on sales calls, talking to customers directly and closing that feedback loop from how is, an actual customer interacting with the product and what would they like to be having their experience be, and bringing that information all the way back to the engineer. It seems so obvious, and yet it's revolutionary in most of our large organizations.
Yeah. 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 It's it is actually an act of rebellion to include the people that develop the product into the conversation with the customer. Because what I see, that's where marketing teams and sales teams struggle the most, is that whatever they're marketing and promising, if that's not aligned with the actual product itself. There's so much you can sell by promising and understanding fear and behavioral science and patterns that you can sell to and feed into with marketing and sales that will get you to close a deal. And if you know the science of selling and an understanding of what gets people to the finish line to commit to coming on board, that is one thing. And customer retention depends on that actually delivering. Most products I've ever bought or services that I didn't enjoy or ended up canceling were due to the fact that they're highly trained and well-skilled salespeople who I enjoyed buying from, which is for me a big decision maker for a company, a product, a service, whether that's the CRM, an app, or a healthcare provider. If the customer service doesn't meet up to the promised standards, that frustration comes in very quickly, which you will then see in public reviews online very quickly. And so it's almost mission critical to have product development, sales, and marketing be integrated so that whatever is promised is also delivered, because otherwise you're risking customer retention.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of how we got here is that in the 90s and the noughts, we had this huge emphasis on optimizing each aspect of the company. And so engineering processes got optimized, and the service got, it was considered a cost center. And so it got outsourced and optimized around cost, and sales got optimized around these sales techniques, and everything was optimized for its own individual metric. But what wasn't put at the center of all of that was the customer experience. Mm-hmm. And so now I think as all of those things have been optimized literally to death, we are now learning that the real opportunity is to optimize the customer's experience and put them at the center of everything. And as we begin to look at what happens when we put the customer at the center, all of a sudden service is not a cost center. It's an opportunity to retain the customer and for research and development, because if they're coming to you with challenges or they're coming to you with requests for how do I do this, all of those kinds of things are opportunities for new things to provide them with. They're opportunities for upsell. They're opportunities for innovation. And now as we're beginning to put the customer at the center of everything, it just changes the entire approach. And I think the beautiful work of design thinking and human-centered design and these other areas that have just given us a new vocabulary of empathy, of customer centricity, has changed how we're approaching things across the board.
Yeah, which I think is a very positive development, because it's so necessary to grow your business quickly, to understand that the customer-centric experience is actually going to yield higher returns, longer relationships, and will help you scale your company faster, especially in this day and age where everything around us with technology and content distribution and how people even consume information about your product and service is so rapidly changing almost every day. It is more important than ever to really keep those channels to the customers open and really understand what it is that they want, need, what are they dissatisfied with, and how can you improve upon the product or service that you're offering based on what what the feedback is, because it takes away the guessing game and ultimately the opportunity costs that you're losing by creating something you think from an engineering standpoint or from an entrepreneurial standpoint where you had an idea of a product or service that could fit the market, but you're not listening to the customer on a regular basis, even after many years of being in business, of what they actually need and how to improve on the business that you have.
Exactly. And as things are moving so quickly, and sales themselves are getting more complex. We need to deal with multiple people in the organization. People are receiving information from so many channels. We're seeing that salespeople need to be integrated not just with support and not just back to R&D, but really also with marketing. That tie-in has got to be very clear, because we can't just blast out messages anymore. They're going nowhere because the market's saturated with content. And the old ways where marketing could just come up with our messages and then feed them over to sales, that doesn't work anymore. Those two departments, right? I mean, you're laughing, but it's still the way it's done in a lot of organizations. Like, marketing defines the brand, and then they come out with these messages, and then they just put out content. And you'll have salespeople literally like creating their own content, their own decks, their own messages, because they're like, these people don't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I know.
Or sales will be generating tons of data and insights about the customer, and marketing doesn't even access that data, which is another thing that's really shifted, is that we have so much access to data, and we haven't fully trained people how to turn that data into wisdom and actual information, how to act on data, how to drive database decisions, and how to use the tools they have at hand to see what's working and see what's resonating with the customer. There's so much opportunity to be using the tools, and it's not a technical skills gap. It's really just a mindset gap of how do we use all of the information we have available. Mm-hmm. And that's still not happening, even at our most data prolific companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Reading data and really understanding it, and also knowing what you want from it, is a very essential component of this. What I've seen is, one bad customer feedback will get a lot of attention, where the data itself will actually show you that is inaccurate, but nobody read the data, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say there's a marketing campaign placed out where you're running email marketing or placing advertisements, and they're converting very high based on, after A/B testing them, and they're converting very high, and not only into sales. Nobody's reading the data and paying attention to which one of the messages resonate the most. And yet somebody listened to the customer complaint that came in as if that is speaking for the majority. So really understanding how all of these components play together, and reading this, not being afraid of the negative feedback you're getting, but also cross-referencing it with data to really truly understand, did we get what we wanted? Did we provoke the right reaction? Because sometimes, you want to push the boundaries perhaps a little bit in your approach by creating a sense of urgency, or sometimes a more controversial message or something that gets people's attention. Or, is there validity to the complaint, because there was a disconnect between message value and what's offered.
Yeah, exactly. And I see places where that data is being captured, and there'll be whole departments that actually bring in and process that data, and yet still both sales and marketing teams will just not reference it and not rely on like going back and looking at what worked, and rarely really working together to say, okay, what's resonating? What's resonating by the data? And then what are you actually hearing?
Mm-hmm.
I think it is important to take in both types of information, but as humans, we become really biased toward the one person that we've actually spoken to than the thousands of people who we have information on by way of the data. It's like, and knowing that we have these cognitive biases are really important, especially as we have access to more information, through AI and through data analytics. We need to understand where we're going to be biased, and that like cognitive bias training, it's not complicated, but again, another thing that just kind of gets lost and missing in this era where we need to be using all of our tools to deal with what's happening around us.
Yeah, and a huge component to cognitive bias training is a willingness to understand that is real for all of us, right? Whether or not you have the training, it's a willingness to be able to say, I could be wrong. Yeah. This is what I heard. This is what it was said. This is where we might have to look into a disconnect between product market fit or potential, a faulty product versus data that will support that or go against that, and knowing that we might be biased in our perception of what is real and not real. And so a collective conversation between multiple entities from a different perspective can be very helpful in understanding what actually needs to move forward, change, and what is a, isolated incident or feedback that doesn't apply to the majority.
I think that vulnerability and that willingness to take in feedback is probably the primary tool for the future of work, because things are shifting so quickly around us, and the ways in which the world worked yesterday are different than the way they work today. And that willingness to take in new information and have our old beliefs be wrong. Maybe they weren't wrong yesterday, but they are today. That's like profound for all of us. It requires vulnerability. And as we move into this time where things are rapidly changing every single day, that willingness to change our minds and have a different viewpoint than we did yesterday, I think is just the primary skill we all need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The knowingness that whatever I believe to be true today may not hold true tomorrow, and not to dig our heels into a belief or perception of what might resonate with others or in that moment, is hugely important if we're trying to create a high value exchange that has that fluidity of what we need for the future of work. Because one thing we know is that everything is going to consistently move and change, and we want to be open to hearing and really listening to what's being said while developing not just the pipeline, the product pipeline, and also the communication channels that allow us to make the best decisions for ourselves, the company, the team, and of course, the business that we're trying to build.
That kind of brings us back to where we started this conversation, which is that willingness to listen, and that ability to listen to the customer and really hear what's important to them is far more important for salespeople now than having great scripts and the best, value props and being able to answer every concern and every pushback with the right line. It's far more important to be able to listen and actually hear what's important to somebody and what they need from the product, but then also from the relationship.
Yeah. This really reminds me, I've been shopping around for health insurances this week across 3 different continents, and listening to the different agents prepare their sales pitch and really catering what they're sending me as a proposal based on what I was asking for was very insightful to see how different companies and different training, and it's also from different countries, translate what I'm asking for into a proposal that's a fit for me, and how few of them listened. It was a lot of these proposals made no sense to me because they neither incorporated the countries in which I live in, or the services I was looking for. And, whether that's, listening to these scripted answers where they think they're overcoming objections to convince me to purchase their particular product over everyone else's because they can beat the rates. There's a big disconnect between the service I was actually asking for and inquiring about, and also understanding the need I have as a person and a business operator with a globally distributed business. And simultaneously, I see it from the other side too, when I work with sales teams in businesses where I look at the scripts they're preparing to do it outwardly. And that disconnect is very frustrating for the consumer. And it also greatly depends on the leadership. How willing are the leaders in that organization to listen to their teams, their feedback, and what's being told to them that could greatly improve the product? What is your experience in getting buy-in from the leadership team to really open up those channels and start listening to what salespeople are actually saying as a result of these conversations?
Well, I think what we see in any organization is that people across the board, whether they're salespeople or support people, that they learn whether the company is going to be customer-centric and whether we're customer-centric around here based on whether their leaders and their HR departments and the company itself deals with the employee from a customer-centric position. And so you'll have a leader say, well, we want our people to listen, and they'll even throw around these new words like empathy and culture. And then there's really an opportunity to point out the disconnect of and they learn that from how you're dealing with them, and looking at the kind of how these cultural patterns start very much at the core and how the leadership is dealing with itself and with each other all the way up at the top, and just keeps resonating out to how a salesperson's dealing with the end customer. And I'm experiencing that there is just a sea change actually in terms of people's willingness to be looking at how culture, employee centricity, the willingness to deal with feedback and have the relationship between manager and employee be kind of a two-way learning relationship. That there's a lot of willingness there that didn't used to be there. And people are getting that this is a reflection all the way out, that you can't have a customer-focused sales team if you don't have a customer-focused HR. That is beginning to happen. The challenge is that especially in legacy organizations, there's just so much momentum in a different direction. There's so much momentum toward treating employees like cogs that can just be fitted in and out, and treating customers, again, just like, a problem to be solved and a checkbox to be marked. Mm-hmm. And so even if individuals want to be different, they do experience kind of the weight of the whole organization around them. Mm-hmm. And that's where finding ways to shift things and really create small stackable wins and create change wherever you can in the organization, and allowing that change to resonate out, I think is really important. And we're seeing that the younger generations, I don't think they want change any more or less than older generations. They're just less tolerant toward old systems. Everybody's wanted it to be changed. They just have a greater perception of authority and autonomy, and a greater perception of opportunity, especially with where things are at for educated and technically savvy people in the market, broadly speaking. And so they're willing to take the risk and create change from wherever they're at. And so even if the leadership is slow to move, they're being pushed by an entire new cohort of young leaders who are demanding that change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I actually see across the board, that the young up and coming leaders are demanding better thought leadership, better coaching, better mentorship, better processes and systems that are aligned with what they're looking for, where they feel they can actually deliver it to the consumer and the customer. And simultaneously, I see that across the board, they're recognizing that there's power in economics. That if you have a customer service, if you have a sales team that overpromises and a customer service department that underdelivers and engages in deflect, deny, avoid, don't get back, manage delay, don't address the issues, keep going at it with objection handling rather than solution-oriented customer service solutions, people will withdraw their funds, their services. They stop being a customer, because now more and more we actually are creating products and services that are actually creating opportunities and change into the marketplace that create alternatives, right? I mean, I know I'm a consumer that I will immediately drop a service based on poor customer service and go to the competitor if I feel that the internalized system of the company runs on deflect, deny, avoid, don't resolve, or potentially even show a disregard of me as a disposable customer. No matter how big or small the amount, including myself and many of especially the millennial generations, will simply go and take their money elsewhere.
Exactly. And that's that kind of internal culture is external brand. Mm-hmm. You can't, whatever's happening inside the company and how the company is actually culturally dealing with the customer, that quickly becomes the external brand. Mm-hmm. And people learn about it very quickly through the social media, through the reviews. And because we have such a proliferation in the marketplace, it's very easy to go take your money elsewhere. And we've moved to these, subscription-based business models that do make it very easy to cancel and move for just about everything. So the consumer is a lot more mobile, and the data and the feedback are a lot faster. And so I feel like this kind of deflect, deny behavior in anything that isn't customer-centric, the truth will out really fast, and it moves so quickly that those folks who are not adopting new ways of being are really quickly finding it reflected in their numbers.
Yes, it's a shortcut rationale, and it yields marginal results long term because they don't have customer satisfaction, they don't get great reviews, they don't have repeat business, and while that may work initially, it doesn't show long-term results.
Exactly. And I think this is even starting to play out in just how employees and contractors are treated, mm-hmm. And where those relationships are in terms of just their ethics and how well people are being taken care of. I think the attention that Amazon is getting and the various meal delivery services and, like Uber and Lyft, and the shift of how concern for how the employee is being treated is really is changing the companies that we're willing to deal with and how we deal with those companies. Even if we really appreciate a service, people want to be part of something they feel good about. And increasingly, if people inside the company aren't being treated well, people outside the company dealing with the service know about it. And so that entire value chain is being pushed both, in terms of its economics, but it's also being pushed towards efficacy, toward employee centricity, and toward treating everybody like a human being across the board.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Wow, we're already at the end of our time. This was so insightful. Thank you so much for making the time and sharing your wisdom with us. We also co-authored an article about this, creating high value exchange it, and we will post the link to the article below this as well. And of course, information on how to get in touch with Tirza and her organization Luman directly should you want to inquire about working with her or learning more about the processes and programs that she creates.
Thank you so much for having me on, Sylvia. You're just such an incredibly insightful leader in this area, and it's really just an honor to share this time with you.
Thank you so much.